Good afternoon, and welcome to the Wednesday afternoon conference call with Trusts Unlimited. This is Jim George speaking. I'm the non-attorney spokesman and facilitator for Trusts Unlimited, and I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call. I've got a lot of information to share with you, but I'm going to move quickly through this call because it's Black Friday over here. A lot of people are really of the opinion that this thing's going to happen soon, and so they want to dot I's and cross T's, and a lot of individuals are applying for a family asset protection trust, but I'm going to try to do my best to cover the information that I believe we need to discuss today. This has been a very historic week, domestically speaking, and I'll be touching on that as well. But with regard to the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar, I would not be surprised to see the currency float within the next 30 days. Things are really picking up steam. Now, I say this because of the progress that has been made recently in a lot of areas. We have progress on the HCL, on the 2024 budget, and, of course, we have in place the international contracts to rebuild the infrastructure of Iraq and the central banks involved in currency swaps with the Iraqi dinar. And none of that makes any sense if the Iraqi dinar remains at 13.20. It just makes no sense at all. So in my opinion, what's happening is all of these things are being done with the parties involved, with the understanding that there's an undisclosed exchange rate, or at least a parameter of rates that they're working with. There have been some developments that I'd like to just mention briefly. First, some of the remarks of Soudani. Soudani has proven himself to be a reliable, honorable person. You could take him at his word. He made a statement a couple weeks ago that the Iraqi dinar is stronger than the dollar. He didn't say will be. He said is. Well, he made another statement last week. He said, we are giving our citizens real purchasing power. Again, not we will, but we are, which to me means it's all done. It's just a matter of when the public disclosure is made. We also know that the board of directors of the CBI is meeting with bank executives regarding, and this is their words, the implementation of the monetary policy. Now that to me can only mean they're referring specifically to a change in the exchange rate and the release of the lower denominations. And the third thing is Iraq has fulfilled all of the requirements in order to join the WTO. So I think a lot of things are going to be happening in the next 30 days. And God willing, we'll all be in the bank shortly thereafter. But I want to touch on what's going on in this country. And the reason I think this is important, not only because we're American citizens and these things are of concern to us, but also because when we go to the bank, we're going to be exchanging our currencies for the U.S. dollar. So it's a good idea to understand what's going on in the country in which you are going to be exchanging your pre-valued currencies for their currency. I want to start with kind of an outlier. There was a movie came out a few years ago called Dave, and it was kind of an interesting movie. Starred Kevin Kline. He played a kind of a comic named Dave, and the thing about this particular comic is he was a dead ringer for the sitting president. Well, it turns out that the sitting president, unbeknownst to the public, had a severe stroke and he was incapacitated. And so the people that were working with the then president, who were not particularly honorable people, the president in the movie was William Harrison Mitchell, decided that they were going to bring this guy in as a patsy to help them complete their agenda. Well, Dave reluctantly agreed to step in and pretend he was the president. But then he threw him a curve. He was a decent guy who didn't play along with the agenda of these dudes. And he basically challenged me, go ahead and tell them that the real president's had a stroke and you brought me in, and we'll see who goes to jail. Well, the reason I bring this up is because the idea for this movie came up with something that happened in history and actuality. And it was the fact that Woodrow Wilson suffered a severe stroke in the last 2 years of his presidency. And the public was unaware of this. And his wife, Edith, basically ran the country doing her best to try to understand what Woodrow Wilson wanted done. But she had him secluded. Even the cabinet couldn't really see him. And for all intents and purposes, his wife ran the country. Well, stranger than fiction. Fast forward to today, and now we have Joe Biden, and arguments can be made that he was installed. There was a lot of shenanigans during the primaries to oust, his name escapes me right now, someone else, the other guy that was leading in the polls, and Biden got the nomination to be president. And, of course, now Biden's ailing health is obvious to all, particularly after the debate. And we see now he's being led around like a child by his wife, Jill. So history seems to repeat itself. But some other important things happened this week, both in the Supreme Court. First, we had the reversal of the Chevron deference case. Now, this is important because what this case basically said is when there are differences of interpretation between what an agency believes a given regulation means and what someone in the private sector means, the agency got deference in the court. Well, that's been reversed. So now, in a situation where there's a legitimate difference of opinion regarding the interpretation of a given statute, the government agency will no longer be given deference. They'll be on equal footing with the party from the private sector. So for me, that's the first nail in the coffin of the administrative state, and that's huge. And the second thing was the immunity ruling that the Supreme Court made. Now, the left had an absolute fit over this decision, and just about everything they said about it, inclusive of what Biden said, is patently false. What the decision said regarding immunity for the president, not Donald Trump, the presidency. They're fixated on Trump, but this ruling had to do with separation of powers in the presidency. They said the president enjoys immunity for core official acts. That means a sitting president can't make decisions based on whether he thinks the opposition is going to sue him. The second thing they said is that the president enjoys a presumption of innocence in decisions in his outer perimeter of core acts, but the president does not enjoy immunity for wholly private acts as a sitting president. Well, that brings us to a couple of things. It's interesting that that the left is so upset about this, because their whole January 6th concern is that this was somehow going to be election interference. But it's a little bit of the pot calling the kettle black, because what we've seen is that the Democrats turned right around and tried to pull Trump off of the ballot in several of the swing states. And a number of state attorney generals have come up with some very original cases to bring against the President of the United States. So it's a double win from the Supreme Court. Now, with regard to the insurrection issue in January 6th, you have to go to the 14th Amendment, Section 3, which basically says a couple of things. First, it says, for whatever reason, that the president and the vice president are exempt from the 14th Amendment, Section 3. Secondly, this amendment was ratified in 1868 after the Civil War, and the reason that it concentrated primarily on the states is because it was the states, and the governors and the representatives of the states that were seceding from the Union. So this has been a very, very eventful week. And I think 100 years from now, when people are studying history, this week is going to be a very important read for them. Now, why do I bring all this up? Because it may seem like, on first blush, kind of a non sequitur, but it's not. Because what's happening here is the Constitution of the United States is being jammed down the throat of the activist left who's going after a sitting president. Now, this is my opinion here. Yeah, they don't like Trump. He was an outsider. They don't like his style. He's not erudite. But what they really, really don't like about Trump is they fear in a second term that he will institute an audit of the Federal Reserve, which, in my opinion, could very well result in ending the Federal Reserve and returning to Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution, which allows the creation of a people's currency, not a Federal Reserve or central bank currency that we have to pay interest on and borrow. And that destroys their complete laundering system. People always ask, how do these guys get to be millionaires and become filthy rich on $150,000 a year working in the Senate or the House? Well, the way they do it is by borrowing money from the Federal Reserve with an open credit card, then voting for a lot of that money to go to foreign nations, which those nations then kick back to them through their charitable organizations and nonprofits. The best example I can think of is the Clintons. When the Clintons left office, they had a net worth of about $850,000. They're now worth well over $200 million. Well, neither of them has created a single job. Where did that money come from? Came from their charitable foundation, the Clinton Initiative, where they basically pocketed 90% of the money donated to that charity. So all of this is going to stop. The Federal Reserve, which is actually the third central bank created in this country, very well could come to an end. We could go back to Section 1, Article 10 of the Constitution, not only meaning that we would create our own currency, but this could very well result in a substantial reduction in the federal income tax and a return to the federal government revenues coming from government bonds and from tariffs. But this is not what the left wants. And the Chevron deference case basically begins the reversal of 40 years of the creation of the administrative state. An example of administrative state abuse would be what happened with COVID, with all of the CDC mandates. Ended up in people losing their businesses, people losing jobs. It created all kinds of unnecessary problems, closures of the schools and all of that. Well, it looks like the jig is up on all of that, and they're going to have to find another way to exact control extra constitutionally, but it's not going to be through the administrative state, and this is all very good news. Now, why this is important is because the trust package that we've established ensures that you have the protections of the Bill of Rights in the Constitution. And I want to touch very briefly on the benefits of establishing this package, but I want you to not only think about it in terms of what we've been talking about for 15 years, basically, which is all of the reasons you'd want to establish a trust and assign the currencies to the trust pre-RV, but as an American citizen, who simply wants to exercise their constitutional rights, primarily to tell the federal government to leave them alone. Let us live our lives in peace. Stay out of our wallet. Stay out of our personal business. It's none of your business if I bought a stick of gum or an AR-15. I'm an American citizen. This is my right. Leave me alone. By establishing this trust package, you're going to preserve your privacy and your anonymity. No one will know your net worth or your constitutes your estate, and frankly, it's none of their damn business anyway. Second, trust will allow you to avoid IRS scrutiny. The business transactions occur within the trust. You merely receive the interest and dividends and use of the assets owned by the trust. Third, there's the gifting trust that's been included. Now, if you're an individual that has currencies and you want to give currencies to family and friends, by utilizing the gift subtrust, not only will you avoid the federal gift tax, but you'll have complete control of the post-RV proceeds. But beyond that, you can create life estates for individuals, giving them the use of a car or a home or some other asset, which is owned by you through the trust. So you have control of that asset. Trust will also allow you to avoid the cost and delay of probate, which means no one will know the size of your estate, who your heirs are, and how much they each stand to inherit. And it will eliminate the federal estate tax, which can be as much as 65% of your estate in excess of $12 million, meaning that your heirs will inherit 100% of their inheritance absent the federal estate tax. And there are other asset protection benefits as well. If you're a currency holder, let's say hypothetically you had 10 million dinar, you paid $10,000 for the currencies and assigned them to your trust. They've subsequently revalued for $10 million, and that would be a conservative estimate. Can you be sued for $10 million? No. Why? Because the currencies were only worth $10,000 when you transferred them out of title to the trust. Post-RV, you're protected because the package of trust has a number of sub-trusts. So you place your assets, each of them in separate sub-trusts. So if, for example, you're in a car accident and the accident's your fault and someone wants to sue you, the only thing available to them would be what's available in the sub-trust owning the car, because all of your other assets are in the other sub-trusts, which under the law are separate legal entities having nothing whatsoever to do with the accident in question. Therefore, the plaintiff would have no standing to pursue those assets. So this trust package is a very good thing to have, and what we're really seeing right now is the dying gasps of a progressive movement that we've been dealing with for 100 years. The progressive movement began in the early 20th century, and the left likes to use words knowing that the general public will take them to mean one thing when they mean something totally differently. So when you hear the word progressive, you think, well, to progress, to improve. But that's not what the word meant. They were called progressives because they wanted to, quote-unquote, progress beyond the colloquial constraints of the Constitution. By constraints, they meaning the Bill of Rights, the things the government can't do to you. Barack Obama, when he ran for president, said it a little differently. He said he was going to fundamentally transform the country, and he referred to the Bill of Rights as a series of negative rights because they limited the government. Well, sorry, pal, that's precisely the point, so that people like you can't lord it over the rest of us. We're American citizens. We have these inalienable rights, and all we want is to be left the hell alone, and that's what this trust helps you to do. Now, before marketing this trust to the general public, this trust package was available to our clients, and it had an initial cost of anywhere from $6,000 to $10,000. But by mass marketing it to Dinarians, we reduced the price to $3,000. If you pay us up front, rather than go with a deferred payment arrangement, we reduced the price further to $2,500. The things we've discussed here are of interest to you, particularly if you're Dinarian, I suggest you contact us to get our initial no-obligation package. You can contact us by phone or email. Our email address is trusts with an S, Unlimited LLC @gmail.com. And our phone service is 307-274-4122. Contact us by email or phone. We'll be happy to get our initial trust package out to you. It does contain everything you need if you wish to proceed, including an invoice if you wish to pay for the trust by credit card. But the invoice auto-cancels after 5 days. You're under absolutely no obligation to proceed. You can review the package. It has a lot of information about us, about trusts, about the currencies, about the current political situation. You can contact us if you have any questions. We'll be happy to assist you. Again, if you wish to proceed, everything you need is included in the package. If not, enjoy the information, and the invoice will cancel after 5 days. Now, our next call is scheduled for next Wednesday. Certainly, if something of a dramatic nature were to happen between now and then, we'll try to get out an emergency email and schedule an emergency conference call. But failing that, we'll be back next Wednesday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Thanks so much for listening, everyone, and have a great week. Bye-bye now.